So we have a retreat running this week, and the retreat is, we are in Lent. We are looking at Jesus' journey to the cross in the retreat times. And so in our worship this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in the morning we are going to be looking at, you'll work this out very quickly, some of the 7 signs of John, because we haven't got 7 worships between now and Friday. So we are looking at some of the 7 signs of John, and the reason that we're doing that is because the 7 signs of John are John's desire to present Jesus in the way that he is who he says he is. And so he carefully chooses the stories to give the examples that he wants to build a case that Jesus is who he says he is. You've probably noticed that John is an unusual gospel because he is different to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell us the stories in more or less chronological order. John doesn't care, if it seems, if he has a story first that actually happened much later in Jesus' life, because he's got another agenda. He is building a case to demonstrate that Jesus is who he says he is. So he doesn't just tell the healings and the miracles of Jesus to demonstrate that, Jesus' power to do that. It's part of, if he was a barrister, I guess, part of the case, to justify. And of course, John wrote his gospel much later in life. And I bet he spent those years pondering, teaching, and the more he taught, the more he pondered, the more he saw. And so John is the distilled wisdom of how he sees Jesus' life. So it's a very different kind of gospel. Things that reveal the deeper truths of Jesus. So we'll do 4 signs this week. And I am going to do one probably of the most well-known signs. And it's John chapter 2. And I'm going to read the first 11 disciples, because I've just read the word. The first 11 verses. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw out some and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It's a lovely story, isn't it? Lovely story, one you've probably heard preached on over and over and over and over and over. The third day. On the third day, a wedding took place. These little tiny details, why do we need to know it was the third day? Well, I think it probably gives us the sense that this is an eyewitness. He was there. He knew it was the third day. And why was it the third day? Because it had probably been 3 days' walk from where they were before. You can go back and have a look at that if you want to, where they came from. They were with John, baptizing in the Jordan. And that's kind of south of Galilee, so it probably took them 3 days to walk up the Jordan Valley up to Galilee. So on the third day, they arrived at the wedding. And life in a small village like Cana, weddings were village affairs, and they weren't just the kind of the afternoon that we have here. It was days, a week maybe, of celebration. The whole community would have been there, and probably some people from the neighbouring community and the neighbouring community after that. Jesus' mother was already there, which kind of gives us the impression that the wedding was already underway. And he and his disciples joined the celebration. Jesus was beginning to gather his disciples. So far, Jesus had done nothing in public. No public miracles so far. And John tells us this story as the first of the signs where he's going to build his case. The wedding is underway, full swing. And then, not just the unexpected, but the disastrous takes place. And that is, the wine was gone. I think it's hard for us to perhaps get a sense of what a disaster this was at this time. John, who tells the story, doesn't tell us why. Doesn't tell us why the wine ran out. Did they have more people than they expected? Did they get the calculations wrong? Were the people thirstier than usual? Don't know. We just don't know. All we know is the wine had run out. And the wedding was not over. And this was shameful. In fact, a humiliation from which the family probably would not recover. It's not a good start to a wedding, is it? Not a good start to a marriage. It's a disgrace for the family. It was dishonourable for the family to run out of wine. So to save the family's embarrassment, and it kind of gives you the impression that maybe this wasn't known publicly yet. Maybe Mary, the mother of Jesus, was family, and so she knew early on that the wine had gone. And she comes to Jesus and tells him the situation. It's interesting, isn't it? She says, they have no more wine. That's it. They have no more wine. I find it fascinating that she doesn't tell him what to do. Being his mother, she probably could have done. Maybe she thought she ought not, but she could have told him what to do. She doesn't even ask him to do something. She just tells him how it is. What's happened? And you know, that's quite a good way to pray, isn't it? Isn't it? I'm not going to go in, I could go off on a tangent, but I won't. But what would that mean for you if you just told God how it was? What's happened? Without so could you do this, and please could you do that, and maybe this, and maybe that. Just, this is how it is, Lord. And then she says to the servants, clearly she was expecting him to do something, even though she hadn't said, please will you do something. She said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And you know, I find that fascinating too, because if that was prayer, it's almost like giving God permission to do whatever he wants in this situation, isn't it? Are we brave enough to do that? Do whatever you want, God, in this situation. Whatever he says, do it. If it sounds daft, do it. If it's out the ordinary, do it. We would do well to listen to that, wouldn't we, as well, when God asks us to do something that you want to go, me? No. And then Jesus says, woman. Woman. We mustn't get hung up on that, okay? We must not get hung up on that. It doesn't translate well, I don't think. It makes Jesus sound harsh. It makes him sound unfeeling, uncaring, and I don't think that's what this is about. I do wonder if it is the moment that, in a sense, Jesus steps out from under his mum's care and acknowledges that actually it's God who is in control, no longer subject to mum and dad. I don't know, I guess it would be similar to when teenagers go to university, maybe. And there is a transfer, isn't there, of something. I don't even know how to describe it. The growing up moment, maybe. And Jesus stepped into his role as Lord. And so he doesn't call her mother. He calls her by another term. But it is a term of affection and endearment. He doesn't use it very often, but it is an affectionate term. And whatever anybody might have expected him to do, it probably was not fill the ceremonial washing jars with water. They're enormous. I've been to Cana. I've seen them, or things like them. They are huge, absolutely huge. Back-breaking to fill. I don't know how they filled them. If they had to, cans or buckets or something. I don't know, but they're enormous. Presumably it took some time, and when they had done it, they went back to Jesus and said, done. Now what do we do? And he said, take some of it to the master of the banquet. Best wine ever. This wine is magnificent. And not only is it magnificent, it's abundant. 20 to 30 gallons, I did some sums. 120 to 180 gallons in total. Split the difference, make it 150. Best wine. 680 litres. 900 bottles. £10 a bottle? That's quite a bar, isn't it? If you think about it. £10,000 worth of wine? Wow. Whatever the volume of wine that was produced, this is overflowing generosity, isn't it? Overflowing generosity. Maybe everybody went home with a tankard at the end of the wedding. But you see, we mustn't forget the wine itself, because in that culture, the wine itself was a sign of blessing. And if the wine had run out, it kind of showed that the benediction on that marriage had run out. So it's not a good place to start a wedding, is it, when the blessing has already run out, even before they've started? So what does John want us to see? What does John want us to see? In the creative power of God, Jesus has the ability to change water into wine. One substance into a completely different substance. So it tells us that Jesus is Lord, creation. He was part of creation, Lord of nature. And he continues to be Lord of creation, nature today, not only in the nature outside, but within us. And so he has the power to transform us. I love the fact that he used the ritual, the gallon stone jars that was used for the purification. And he kind of put them to a new use. He was doing away with the old rituals. I don't suppose they saw it then, but they would soon see the pattern, wouldn't they? And I also find it very interesting that the master of the banquet had no idea where this wine came from. The servants did. And isn't that a pattern that happens through Jesus' ministry? Those who should have sinned didn't, and the people of the streets did. And we see that here. When I was in Cana several years ago now, when we were working at Nazareth, one of the chaplains from Nazareth Hospital spoke about the difference between the feeding of the 5,000 and this miracle. And he said the feeding of the 5,000 was bread, multiplied, bread, multiplied, bread, multiplied and multiplied, bread. This is not a multiplication. This is a transformation. And so he too, Jesus, can change our ordinary into the extraordinary. What is it you need him to do with your ordinary to change it into something extraordinary today, this week, this month, in life? So by inviting Jesus into our ordinary and not capping the ceiling to which he can work, just what might be possible?